I want to take a second today and talk about the recent announcement that Caitlin Clark will not be joining the USA Olympic team, and why I think this story can actually teach us something very important about our own financial situations. Now, some people think this decision was a big mistake.
So are we really trying to go to game?
The idiocy of Team USA women's basketball. How dare you make this decision? It's stupid.
Personally, I agree with them. I think this is all very relevant to a concept called myopic optimization that can actually impact all of us personally. But before we get into that, let's take a step back here and let's start with some quick background for those who somehow may have missed this story. Caitlin Clark was a star basketball player for the Iowa Hawkeyes in college, winning multiple prestigious awards during her career, including the Wade Trophy and the Naismith Trophy. She broke several NCAA records, including most career points, most points in a single season, and most career three-pointers. Her performance has established her as one of the greatest players in NCAA history. However, perhaps her greatest accomplishment of all is how many people she draws into the sport and has brought to women's basketball. Games she's been involved in have crushed previous records, and arenas seem to sell out wherever she goes. The 2024 Women's National Championship game against South Carolina saw a record 18.87 million viewers versus only 14.82 million viewers for the Men's National Championship game between Connecticut and Purdue. And this effect continued in the WNBA. When Caitlin Clark comes to town, teams like the Washington Mystics are moving their games from their usual arenas to larger NBA arenas and filling those up. Clark has a really electrifying style of play that's just fun to watch. It's a lot like watching Steph Curry play. Now, getting to our Olympic situation. Clark was one of 14 players invited to the USA team camp. However, because she was playing in the Final Four at the time, she wasn't able to attend the camp. Some had suggested that her first month in the WNBA would be sort of a tryout for the Olympic team. And despite her having a very good start to her WNBA career, it was announced that Clark would not be invited to join the Olympic team on their 12-player roster. This was also despite having stats better than some of the named players on that roster, and one guard actually recovering from an injury in 2023, and not being clear when she'll be back or how close to 100% she'll be when she returns. Okay, so enough of that background. Here's where I think there's a lesson to take away from all this. The reason commonly given for her not being selected is that she's not one of the 12 best players, and the goal of the USA Basketball Selection Committee has to be maximizing their chances to win a gold medal. The selection committee chair, Jen Rosati, was quoted by the Associated Press as saying, "It would be irresponsible for us to talk about her in a way other than how she would impact the play of the team, because it wasn't the purview of the committee to decide how many people would watch or how many people would root for the U.S. It was our purview to create the best team we could for Cheryl," meaning the coach. Now, I don't know anything about the inner workings of the selection committee, but if this is true, it's a big problem because USA women's basketball is exhibiting what we could refer to as myopic optimization, or single criterion optimization, meaning the tendency to be excessively focused on optimizing a single characteristic, metric, or short-term goal while neglecting other important factors that could lead to a more balanced or sustained success. Maybe a good example of myopic optimization is skipping leg day.
Bruh.
The optimization in this case, focusing on nothing but maximizing chances of winning a gold medal in 2024, is myopic in several ways. First, it's myopic in being focused solely on one point in time. It certainly makes sense to be more focused on winning in 2024 when selecting a 2024 team, but there should also be some focus on how selections today could impact future teams. In the past, we've seen the benefits of adding rookies fresh out of college to the team, such as Diana Taurasi, Candace Parker, and Elena Del Donne. The second way in which this is myopic optimization is that it's focused solely on winning a gold medal, when the reality is that USA Basketball has a mission that is much broader than just winning gold medals. Other reasonable objectives for USA Basketball, just to name a few, could be things like elevating awareness and interest in the sport and bringing in more resources for USA Basketball. The reality is that USA Basketball is a business. Yes, it's organized as a nonprofit, but nonprofits are still businesses. Nonprofit is just a tax classification that subjects them to certain rules. And we don't have to speculate on the mission of USA Basketball here, because we can simply go and look at their mission statement, which says, as the governing body for basketball in the United States, USA Basketball is a worldwide leader in sport through competitive excellence in international competition and by promoting, growing, and elevating the game at all levels, while ensuring that athletes and other participants compete and develop in a safe, inclusive, and welcoming environment. Right here, in their own mission statement, seems to be what I would pull out as three main priorities. First, competitive excellence in international competition. Second, promoting, growing, and elevating the game at all levels. And third, ensuring competition and development in a safe, inclusive, and welcoming environment. What we've heard from the selection committee is that when picking a team, they were myopically focused on optimizing just the first priority here and ignoring USA Basketball's other areas of focus. Now, we'll get to the personal finance side of things here since that's what I normally talk about, but I do want to make one last point on the myopic focus here because I do think that can also be very relevant to our personal decisions, and that's this. The way we prioritize our different goals certainly can change based on the circumstances we're in. The fact that USA Basketball is so dominant and there's so much talent in our basketball system compared to the rest of the world makes the myopic optimization here even worse. USA Women's Basketball is 70-3 in Olympic competition and has won 7 consecutive gold medals. Now, if we're talking about a nation that isn't dominant in basketball, maybe it makes sense to heavily prioritize maximizing the ability of their team in the 2024 Olympics, perhaps to the point of ignoring other goals. Maybe winning a gold medal is the most impactful thing another country could do to also promote the growth and support interest in it in their country. But that non-dominant country and the US are in very different situations. Good economic thinkers are always thinking at the margins, meaning if we're able to change one thing and hold everything else constant, what's the impact of that change? Let's for a second grant the argument that Caitlin Clark is not one of the most deserving guards based on her skill set. I personally am not so sure about that, particularly given that Clark has better stats than some of the other players selected and has achieved those better stats while facing relentless defense and playing with a weaker supporting cast on her team. But again, that's not the point here. Let's say the team does get slightly worse if they selected Clark. On the dimension of competitive excellence in international competition, the question we should be asking is, how much would this hurt the USA's chances of winning a gold medal? At the time I'm making this video, DraftKings has USA women's team's odds at minus 1,400, which, if we convert this number from American odds to an implied probability, would suggest that the US women's team currently has about a 93.33% chance of winning the gold medal. Now, I know I'm ignoring vigorish or vig here, and you can go down that rabbit hole if you want to, but I'm trying to keep this simple, and I'll just call this 93% to give us a nice round number. So we have a 93% chance for the US women to win the Olympics without Caitlin Clark on their team. Let's say we add her and we take Diana Taurasi off. Assuming that truly does hurt the team, where does this move the needle? From 93% to 92%? I have no idea what that actual number is, but I think the magnitude here has to be pretty small, if it even exists at all. So the marginal impact of adding Clark to the team has, at worst, a very minimal impact on the first objective of USA Basketball's mission. Barring some massive upsets, USA Women will win gold whether Clark is on the team or not. However, we know Clark's inclusion as it relates to USA Basketball's second objective of their mission, promoting, growing, and elevating games at all levels, is not trivial. The WNBA just announced that merchandise sales are up 756% this year. That's not all attributable to Clark, but a lot of it is. And I haven't fact-checked these exact numbers, but according to sports writer Jimmy Traina, here is a comparison of Caitlin Clark's games and non-Caitlin Clark games for the first weekend in June, with Clark's games averaging over 17,000 fans per game versus only 7,000 fans per game for the rest of the WNBA. It's certainly hard to say exactly how those numbers would translate to the Olympics, but we're consistently seeing Clark more than doubling numbers of attendance at games in the US. There's very good reason to believe that her addition to the team would mean more people tuning in, more merchandise sales, more people interested in the sport and talking about it, more young girls going out and picking up a basketball, and even more attention for whoever the players are that do get the most playing time in Paris. Now, to apply this to our own lives, I think the ultimate lesson here is that we shouldn't be myopic focusing on our goals. In particular, we shouldn't become so focused on optimizing one particular characteristic that we miss big opportunities to move the needle on things that we care about. I personally see this all the time with some young financial planners who get almost obsessed with acquiring technical knowledge and designations. They already have 3 designations and they're pursuing their 4th, when the reality is that working on their communication skills, their networking, their marketing, or their sales skills are all going to be far more impactful on their long-term success than myopically optimizing their technical skills. Of course, evaluating this is always going to be very specific to one's own skills and goals. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to how we should prioritize between our given goals, but that all depends on what we're trying to do, where we currently are, and what opportunities we have to move the needle. This is where having perspectives from peers, mentors, mastermind groups, coaches, all of that can be very beneficial for understanding where we have room to improve. And in most cases, it takes being very open to direct feedback in these situations. I think oftentimes there's a tendency to get focused on what we're good at because it can feel good to do and focus on the things that we are best at. It's often not fun to work on the areas that we struggle. I think that's why almost all of us have such a tendency to develop imbalances in the first place. Just to give another example, since it's the world that I know best, another financial advisor example is the type of advisor who has tremendous networking and social skills, but lacks the technical knowledge and competencies. These individuals can have tremendous success early in their careers. They often have some early success growing their practices, raising their personal income, because it's often hard for clients to evaluate advisors, and their technical skills or limitations may not be apparent to most anyone. But eventually, this will catch up with these advisors. For instance, they may start to lose some of their best clients with more technical or demanding needs. Maybe it's physicians or executives or professional athletes with unique needs, and they lack that technical expertise, and that gets exposed at some point. Maybe another advisor provides a second opinion and points out a major opportunity being missed from a tax planning standpoint. No matter how good the personal relationship was, this can erode the client's trust in the advisor and lead them to start working with someone else. But particularly in a business context, we can also start thinking outside of ourselves. If I personally struggle with organization, I could try to get more organized myself, or perhaps I need to hire a team member who can take some of that off my plate for me. Now, another example of myopic optimization in personal finance could be getting overly focused on fees and not thinking about the benefits you may get from various goods or services you receive. I see this often with mutual fund or ETF fees. Now, we have some zero expense ratio funds available now, and sometimes I'll see people overly focused on those funds. It can seem like the objective is to minimize costs in their portfolio rather than optimizing their growth. Beyond some more technical points such as understanding how transaction fees, spreads, and even activities such as securities lending within a fund ultimately do impact the cost, it's my opinion that often a well-designed, well-diversified portfolio isn't going to be made entirely of zero expense funds. It makes sense to pay something to get some extra benefit like diversification or just a broader set of funds to build a complete portfolio. We can also apply the same logic to all sorts of professional services. I've seen many people go with the cheapest accountant to do their taxes, or they do it themselves with no idea of how much their suboptimal tax planning is actually costing them. Yes, they were reducing costs, and that benefit can be enticing because of how tangible it is, but there are the seen and the unseen effects, and sometimes those unseen effects can be very costly. I could go on and on listing examples, but I think I've made my point here. Ultimately, I'm pretty bummed to even be using this USA basketball example in a video, not because I'm a fan of Caitlin Clark, although I am, but because of the missed opportunity to grow the sport of women's basketball and let this unique popularity that Clark has at this moment in time bring more attention to the game and the women on the USA national team. But I felt like I'd make this video here because I was hearing this rationale over and over again, that the committee needed to be focused solely on maximizing the chances of a gold medal in 2024. It's just such a perfect example of myopic optimization that I wanted to draw attention to that, and hopefully it's something we can try to be mindful of and avoid in our own lives. But what do you think? Share your thoughts below. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and until then, I'll see you in the next one.